The lecture hall buzzed with the quiet conversations of students from across the galaxy. Dae-hyun sat near the back, his datapad open but largely ignored. He had learned early in his time at the Galactic Institute that many lectures covered warfare in purely theoretical terms. The professors spoke of ancient battles the way one might discuss chess games, all strategy and no blood. Professor Veltris entered the room, her chitinous legs clicking against the polished floor. She was an insectoid from a species that had not fought a war in over 4,000 years. Her compound eyes swept across the assembled students as she began her announcement. "Your assignment for this semester," she said, her voice translated through the universal comm system, "is to replicate an example of your species' ancient battle armor. You will use modern materials and fabrication techniques. You must also document its historical significance and present your findings to the class." Around the room, students leaned forward with interest. Mirai, an Altarian whose energy form shimmered in a containment suit, turned to Dae-hyun. They had become study partners over the past few months, mostly because Mirai was endlessly curious about humans. "This should be fascinating," Mirai said. "What will you choose? I have heard humans used metal plates and leather in your early periods." Dae-hyun smiled slightly. "That's one option." Near the front, a student from Kelmar Prime was already discussing plans to replicate the ceremonial shell armor worn by warriors over 6,000 years ago. Another student spoke excitedly about decorative crystal plating that had not been worn in actual combat for millennia. The projects were exercises in archaeology, recreating artifacts that belonged in museums. Professor Veltris continued explaining the parameters. The replicas had to be functional, not merely decorative. They needed to demonstrate an understanding of the materials and construction methods. Most importantly, students had to explain what the armor revealed about their species' approach to warfare. Dae-hyun listened quietly. He was already forming a plan, though he suspected it would cause some complications. He pulled up his personal comm and sent a message to his sister Hyejin back on Earth. The message was simple. "Need you to ship something from storage. Authorization code attached. Don't ask questions yet." The class ended with students chattering about their projects. Mirai floated alongside Dae-hyun as they left the lecture hall. "You seem thoughtful," she observed. "Have you decided what armor to replicate?" Dae-hyun nodded. "I have some ideas." "Will you show me references? I would love to see what human ancient armor looked like. Your species has such a violent history it must be quite primitive compared to modern standards." That word hung in the air. Primitive. Dae-hyun had heard it before. Usually from species who had enjoyed peace for so long, they had forgotten what desperation looked like. He did not take offense. How could they know? "I'll show you," he said. "But I need to ask you something first." "Of course." "When you hear ancient armor, how old are you thinking?" Mirai's energy form pulsed in a way that indicated consideration. "For my people, our last war was 11,000 years ago. So ancient armor would be from that era. Why do you ask?" "Just curious about perspective," Dae-hyun said. Over the next week, Dae-hyun made arrangements. He spoke with Professor Taeyang, a human who taught courses on Earth history at the Institute. Taeyang was older, his hair gray, and he had served in the Earth Defense Force before transitioning to academia. "You're really going to do this?" Taeyang asked when Dae-hyun explained his plan. "It answers the assignment," Dae-hyun replied. "It's going to cause a reaction." "I know." Taeyang studied him for a long moment. "You'll need authorization to bring it on campus. I can help with that, but you should be prepared for questions." "I've answered questions before." The package arrived from Earth via military transport, marked with security seals and hazard warnings. Dae-hyun signed for it at the campus receiving station, where the attendant, a being whose species name Dae-hyun could never properly pronounce, looked at the manifest with concern. "This is listed as military equipment," the attendant said. "Deactivated and cleared for educational purposes," Dae-hyun confirmed, showing the proper documentation. The attendant hesitated but approved the release. Dae-hyun loaded the heavy case onto a transport cart and took it to his dormitory. His roommate, Kyung-min, a gentle being from a species of traders who had not seen conflict in living memory, watched nervously as Dae-hyun secured the case in their shared storage area. "What is that?" Kyung-min asked. "My semester project." "It looks dangerous." "It was," Dae-hyun admitted. "Once." He did not open the case yet. There would be time for that during the presentation phase. For now, he began the research documentation, pulling up files that his former squad mate Ji-won had sent from the military archives. The data was clinical. Mark 7th, combat exosuit, service record, deployment history. But behind each line of text was a memory. Dae-hyun remembered the weight of the armor, the way it had moved with him, the heads-up display that had saved his life more times than he could count. Mireille visited his dormitory a few days later, curious about his progress. She found him surrounded by holographic displays showing technical specifications and battle reports. "Is this your research?" she asked, examining the data. "Part of it." She studied one of the images, a schematic of armor plating with breach points marked in red. "This looks very advanced for ancient equipment." It served its purpose. "When was this armor used?" Dae-hyun looked up at her. 5 years ago." Mireille's energy form flickered with confusion. 5 years? But the assignment is for ancient armor." "For my species," Dae-hyun said quietly. 5 years is ancient enough." The statement hung between them. Mireille began to understand that she had made an assumption, one that many in the galaxy made about humanity. They had joined galactic society so recently that everyone assumed their violent past was truly past, buried in the distant reaches of history. "You were in a war 5 years ago?" Mireille asked. "We all were," Dae-hyun said. "Every human of military age. It wasn't optional. It was survival." "I did not know." "Most don't." Mireille was silent for a moment, processing this information. Finally, she asked the question that would echo through the campus in the coming weeks. "What will you bring to class?" Dae-hyun met her gaze. "Do you want it cleaned or bloodstained?" The materials lab was a massive space filled with fabrication equipment and analysis stations. Students from dozens of species worked at various terminals, scanning artifacts and designing their replicas. The air hummed with the sound of molecular printers and holographic projectors. Dae-hyun wheeled in his sealed case on the scheduled day for initial presentations. Other students had already begun showing their preliminary work. A Kelmar student displayed a beautiful reconstruction of shell plating, each piece hand-carved and fitted together with modern adhesives. The original design was over 6,000 years old, worn by warriors in ceremonial duels that had not resulted in actual death. Another student presented crystalline armor from her homeworld, elegant and ornate, created for ritual combat that had been more performance than warfare. The replicas were stunning works of art, precise recreations of museum pieces. Professor Veltris moved from station to station, her multiple limbs gesturing as she offered feedback. She praised the attention to detail, the research quality, the respect shown to ancient traditions. The atmosphere was academic, almost celebratory. Then Dae-hyun opened his case. The sound of the seal breaking was sharp in the quiet lab. Several students nearby turned to look. Mireille, who had positioned herself close to Dae-hyun's station, watched as he lifted the lid. The smell hit first. Even after years in storage, even with the preservation systems, there was a faint odor of burned metal and something else, something organic that the cleaning systems had never quite eliminated. The armor lay in segments, each piece nested in foam padding. The outer plating was dark gray, designed to absorb sensor scans. But the darkness was broken by marks, by damage, by the evidence of use. A student from a nearby station gasped. Dae-hyun began removing pieces and setting them on the examination table. The chest plate came first. A long scar ran across its surface where plasma fire had nearly penetrated. The edges of the burn were still visible, metallically frozen mid-melt. The helmet followed. A dent on the left side showed where kinetic impact had struck. Dae-hyun remembered that moment vividly, the ringing in his ears, the way the world had spun. The armor's internal systems had kept him conscious long enough to reach cover. Mirai drifted closer. "This is your ancient armor?" "This is my armor," Dae-hyun confirmed. Other students began to gather, abandoning their own work. Professor Veltris noticed the crowd and approached, her antennae twitching with curiosity. She stopped short when she saw what lay on Dae-hyun's table. "This is damaged," she said, her translator rendering her tone as concerned. "Yes," Dae-hyun agreed, "severely damaged. These breaches, this scoring, this is combat damage." "Yes." Professor Veltris examined the armor more closely. Her compound eyes could process more visual information than human eyes, and she was seeing details that others missed. "This is not a replica. This is original equipment." "The assignment was to replicate ancient armor," Dae-hyun said. "I needed the original to work from." "But this is not ancient." Professor Veltris touched one of the burn marks with a careful limb. "This damage is recent. These materials are modern composite." Dae-hyun picked up the arm section, turning it so the light caught the acid scoring along the forearm guard. 5 years old, Battle of Titan's Ridge. This scoring is from hive weapons, acid-based projectiles. The burn on the chest plate is from plasma fire during the Centauri conflict 6 years ago. The dent on the helmet is from kinetic rounds during the Proxima uprising. The lab had gone completely silent. Students stood frozen, listening. "You fought in these conflicts?" Professor Veltris asked. "I fought in all of them. Most humans my age did." A student from a peaceful trading species spoke up, voice trembling slightly. "But these events, they happened during our lifetimes. These are current events, not ancient history." "For you," Dae-hyun said quietly. "For my species, any war we survived is history we can't forget." He continued unpacking the armor. The leg sections showed similar damage. One knee joint had been completely replaced in the field, the new metal a slightly different shade than the original. The boots had been resoled 3 times, the material worn through from running across hostile terrain. Kyung-min, Dae-hyun's roommate, had followed him to the lab. He stood at a distance, visibly uncomfortable. "Why did you keep it like this? Why not repair it properly? Clean it?" Dae-hyun ran his hand along the chest plate. "This isn't just armor. It's a record. Each mark tells a story. Cleaning it would be erasing those stories." He pointed to a small puncture near the shoulder joint. "This one almost killed me. The armor sealed the breach, injected combat stimulants, and locked the joint to prevent movement that would worsen the injury. I fought for another 3 hours before evacuation." Another mark, near the hip. "This one saved Private Yunji. I used my armor to shield her when her own failed. The plating held long enough for both of us to reach the dropship." Professor Veltris was taking notes rapidly, her multiple limbs working several datapads simultaneously. "This changes the nature of your presentation entirely. You are not replicating ancient armor. You are demonstrating current military technology." "With respect, Professor, this armor is retired. The Mark 7 has been replaced by the Mark 9. This is already obsolete by current standards. That makes it historical." "By that definition, My clothing from last year is historical. If your clothing from last year saved 12 lives and survived 47 combat engagements, then yes, I would call it historically significant. The statement hung in the air. Mirai's energy form pulsed with what Daehyun had learned to recognize as agitation. 47 engagements in 5 years? Humanity joined the galactic community immediately after our expansion wars. We did not have the luxury of a long peace before making contact. We were fighting when you found us. A security officer arrived, summoned by someone in the lab. Subin was a professional, calm, and efficient, but even she stopped short when she saw the armor laid out on the table. I received a report of weapons on campus, she said. Daehyun gestured to the armor. It's deactivated. All weapon systems have been removed. It's purely protective equipment now. Subin examined the manifest on her datapad, then looked at the actual armor, comparing specifications. This is military hardware. Retired military hardware, cleared for educational use. Daehyun provided the authorization codes that Professor Taeyang had helped him secure. Subin verified the codes, but her expression remained uncertain. This seems irregular. Professor Taeyang chose that moment to enter the lab. He had been monitoring the situation and had anticipated the need for his intervention. Officer Subin, I can vouch for both the student and the equipment. This is a legitimate academic project. It is also a functioning combat suit, even without weapons, Subin countered. It is a piece of history, Taeyang replied, and history is sometimes uncomfortable. Subin considered this, then nodded slowly. I will allow it, but I will be filing a report with the campus administration. As she left, the gathered students continued to stare at the armor. One of them, braver than the rest, asked, Does it still work? Daehyun picked up the helmet and activated the power cell. The heads-up display flickered to life. Projection systems casting data across the inside of the visor. Status readouts appeared, most showing red warnings for missing weapon systems, but the core functions remained operational. Most of it, Daehyun confirmed. The medical systems, the environmental controls, the structural support, all functional. This armor was designed to keep a soldier alive in conditions that would kill an unprotected human in seconds. He turned the helmet so others could see inside, where padding was stained dark with old blood. No one asked whose blood it was. Some questions answered themselves. Professor Veltris finally spoke again. You will need to present the full specifications and operational history. This is not the project I anticipated, but it may be the most educational one in this class. Daehyun nodded. I will need access to military archives. Some of the information is still classified. I will arrange it, Taeyang said. As the lab session ended and students returned to their own projects, Mirai remained by Daehyun's station. She watched as he carefully repacked the armor. Each piece returned to its foam nest. I apologize, she said quietly. For what? I called your history violent. I implied your armor would be primitive. I did not understand. You could not have known. I should have asked instead of assumed. Her energy form dimmed slightly. How many of your people died in these wars? Daehyun was quiet for a moment. Enough that every family has empty chairs at their table. Enough that we built monuments instead of museums. Enough that we remember. He closed the case and sealed it. Tomorrow he would begin the actual replication process, using modern materials to create a copy of something that was already modern. It was an unusual assignment, but then humanity was an unusual addition to the galactic community. As he wheeled the case out of the lab, he could feel eyes following him. Word would spread quickly. The human student who brought real armor to history class. The man whose ancient battles happened yesterday. The species too young to have properly ancient anything except scars. The story spread across campus faster than Daehyun had anticipated. By the next morning, his name was mentioned in 3 different student news feeds. The headlines varied in tone but shared a common theme of shock and fascination. Dae-hyun sat in his dormitory, reviewing messages on his datapad. His sister Hye-jin had sent a long text, mostly laughing at the chaos he had caused. His former squad mate Ji-won had sent military records that would help with the presentation. And there were dozens of messages from other students, some curious, some accusatory, some simply confused. Mireille arrived at his door mid-morning. "You need to see this," she said, projecting a holographic news article into the air between them. The Galactic Tribune had picked up the story. The headline read, "Human Student Brings Active Military Hardware to History Class." The article was not hostile, but it asked questions. How much did the galaxy actually know about humanity's recent wars? Were humans hiding the extent of their military capabilities? What did this mean for galactic security? "This is bigger than a class project now," Mireille said. Dae-hyun read through the article. The journalist, someone named Somin, had done actual research. She had found public records of the conflicts Dae-hyun had mentioned. The Battle of Titan's Ridge, the Centauri conflict, the Proxima Uprising, the Hive Wars. Each event was documented, but the details had been sparse in galactic databases, footnotes in humanity's admission to the wider community. Now those footnotes were being examined more closely. "I did not intend to create an incident," Dae-hyun said. "I know. But you did answer the assignment honestly." Mireille paused. "That journalist wants to interview you. I saw the request. Will you do it?" Dae-hyun considered. "I should probably speak to Professor Tae-yang first." He found Tae-yang in his office, surrounded by books and artifacts from Earth. The professor was reading the same article, his expression thoughtful. "You have stirred something up," Tae-yang said without preamble. "So I am learning. The Galactic Council has opened an inquiry. Nothing serious yet, just questions about human military capabilities and intentions. They are asking why this information was not more prominent during our admission process." Dae-hyun sat down heavily. "We did not hide anything. We answered every question they asked. They did not ask the right questions. They assumed our wars were ancient history like theirs. When we said we had recently achieved peace, they thought we meant centuries, not years." A new message appeared on Dae-hyun's datapad. He read it and felt his stomach tighten. "I have been contacted by someone from the Galactic Council." An investigator named Young-ho. Tae-yang looked up sharply. "What does he want?" "An interview. He is coming to campus tomorrow." The next day, Young-ho arrived. He was human himself, which surprised Dae-hyun. Young-ho was older, perhaps in his 50s, with the bearing of someone who had spent time in both military and diplomatic circles. They met in a private conference room arranged by the Institute administration. "Sergeant Lee Dae-hyun," Young-ho said, reading from a file. "Earth Defense Force retired. Enlisted at 18, served 7 years, 3 major conflicts, numerous smaller engagements. Honorable discharge with commendations." "That is correct," Dae-hyun confirmed. "Why did you bring your combat armor to a civilian academic institution?" "It answered the assignment requirements." Young-ho smiled slightly. "Let us be more direct. You had to know this would cause attention. You could have chosen ceremonial armor, historical replicas, anything else. Why this?" Dae-hyun met his gaze. "Because pretending our wars are ancient history is a lie. Because every other student in that class brought museum pieces and talked about conflicts so old they are myths. Our battles are fresh. Our dead are still being mourned. Pretending otherwise felt dishonest. Some on the council are concerned. They worry that humanity has not truly embraced peace, that we are a militaristic culture that will destabilize the galactic order. With respect, those concerns are based on misunderstanding." "Explain." Dae-hyun leaned forward. "We did not fight because we love war. We fought because we had no choice. When humanity reached the stars, we encountered hostile forces immediately. We were not ready. We were not prepared. But we adapted, or we died. The armor you are worried about, the weapons you think we are hiding, they were not built for conquest. They were built for survival. Young-ho made notes. The Battle of Titan's Ridge. Tell me about it. The memories came flooding back. Dae-hyun had not spoken about Titan's Ridge in detail since his discharge. We were defending a colony. The enemy had superior numbers and technology. We were supposed to hold for 6 hours until evacuation was complete. We held for 18. Casualties? 40% of the defense force. But the civilians got out. All of them. Your armor was damaged in that battle. My armor saved my life in that battle, multiple times. Dae-hyun paused. That is what these people do not understand. They see weapons and warriors. We see tools and survivors. Young-ho closed his datapad. I am not your enemy, Sergeant Lee. I am trying to understand so I can explain to people who have never faced what you faced. The Council needs context. What will you tell them? The truth. That humanity joined galactic society while still bleeding from our wars. That we have not had the luxury of centuries to heal and forget. That our military capability comes from necessity, not aggression. After Young-ho left, Dae-hyun returned to his dormitory to find Ji-won had sent another package. This one contained detailed combat reports from the engagements his armor had survived. Ji-won had included a note. They want to know about us. Show them everything. That evening, journalist So-min arrived for her interview. She was professional and direct, asking questions that showed she had done extensive research. How many humans your age have military experience? She asked. Most of us. Military service was nearly universal during the expansion period. We needed everyone who could fight. And now? Now we are trying to be something else. Students, teachers, engineers, but the experience does not leave you. So-min gestured to his datapad, where images of the armor were displayed. Why keep it? Why not destroy it or donate it to a museum? Because it is not just mine. This armor carried me through battles where better soldiers died. Destroying it would feel like erasing them. Locking it in a museum would feel like declaring the danger past. It is retired, but not forgotten. Do you think humanity will fight again? Dae-hyun considered the question carefully. I think the galaxy has been peaceful for so long that it has forgotten that peace requires vigilance. I think humanity remembers. Whether that means we will fight again depends on whether the galaxy needs us to. The interview was published the next day. The article was more balanced than the first, focusing on the human perspective. So-min had included quotes from other human veterans, people who had served alongside Dae-hyun or in similar conflicts. A picture emerged of a species that had been forged in crisis and was still learning how to exist without it. The campus response was mixed. Some students sought out Dae-hyun, wanting to hear first-hand accounts. Others avoided him, uncomfortable with the reality he represented. A small group, led by a student named Jin Seo, began organizing protests, claiming that humanity was glorifying violence and militarism. Jin Seo confronted Dae-hyun in the campus commons. You are making other species fear us, Jin Seo said. The student was Altarian, like Mirai, but where Mirai had approached with curiosity, Jin Seo approached with anger. I am showing them who we are, Dae-hyun replied. You are showing them our worst aspects, our violence, our weapons. I am showing them our survival. There is a difference. Is there? You brought instruments of death to an institution of learning. Dae-hyun felt his patience thinning. I brought proof that we endured. Every species in this galaxy has a past. Ours is just closer. The argument drew a crowd. Mirai appeared, positioning herself between Dae-hyun and Jin Seo. He is fulfilling an academic assignment, nothing more. He is turning humanity into a symbol of warfare, Jinseo countered. No, said a new voice. It was Kyung-min, Dae-hyun's roommate, who rarely spoke up in confrontations. He is being honest. The rest of us brought pretty things from safe museums. He brought reality. That makes us uncomfortable. But that does not make him wrong. The crowd murmured, some in agreement, others in continued protest. Dae-hyun decided to leave before the situation escalated further. He had work to do, a replication to build, a presentation to prepare. Back in the materials lab, he began the actual fabrication process. Using the original armor as a template, he would create a modern replica using the latest galactic materials. The irony was not lost on him that the replica would actually be more advanced than the original in some ways. Because galactic materials, science had progressed beyond Earth's in certain areas. As he worked, he thought about Young-ho's questions, about Jinseo's anger, about the galaxy's growing awareness of what humanity had endured. He had not set out to make a statement. He had simply answered an assignment honestly. But sometimes honesty was the most powerful statement of all. The fabrication lab became Dae-hyun's second home over the following weeks. He arrived early each morning and often stayed late into the evening, carefully disassembling his armor piece by piece, scanning each component, analyzing the materials and construction methods. Other students worked on their projects around him, but a respectful distance had developed, some out of fear, some out of reverence, some simply because they did not know how to approach someone whose history was measured in scars rather than centuries. Mirai remained a constant presence. She had appointed herself as Dae-hyun's unofficial assistant, helping with measurements and data analysis. Her energy-based physiology gave her unique insights into the armor's power distribution systems. "This is fascinating," she said one afternoon, examining the neural interface components. "The way this connects directly to the wearer's nervous system, it is far more sophisticated than I expected." Dae-hyun carefully removed the interface module from the helmet. It had to be. In combat, every millisecond matters. The armor needed to respond as fast as thought. But the risk of such direct connection, if the system failed or was damaged, then the wearer would be paralyzed or worse. We knew the risks. We accepted them because the alternative was dying conventionally. Professor Veltris observed from a nearby station, her compound eyes missing nothing. She had been spending more time in the lab since Dae-hyun's project began, clearly fascinated by what she was witnessing. "How long did training take?" she asked. "To operate this armor effectively?" 6 months basic, then ongoing training throughout service. The armor is intuitive in some ways, but mastering all its systems takes years. Dae-hyun activated a holographic display showing the armor's internal layout. Layers upon layers of systems became visible. The outer defensive plating, the kinetic barrier generators, the environmental suit, the medical suite, the structural support frame, the neural interface, the power distribution network. A small crowd gathered to watch the display. Kyung-min pointed to the medical systems. "What are these for?" "Automated trauma response. The armor monitors vital signs constantly. If injury is detected, it responds immediately. Seal breaches, inject medications, stabilize broken bones, apply pressure to wounds. It can keep a critically injured soldier alive long enough for evacuation." "That seems very advanced for armor," a student from Kelmar Prime observed. "It has to be. We did not have the luxury of dedicated medical personnel in every firefight. The armor became the medic." Dae-hyun pulled up a specific memory file from his service record. "During the Centauri conflict, my squad was ambushed. 3 soldiers went down in the first seconds. Their armor kept them alive for 40 minutes while we fought to secure the area and call for extraction. All 3 survived because their armor did not let them die." He paused, remembering. "Without the armor, we would have lost them in minutes." The replication process required Dae-hyun to explain each system in detail. He worked methodically, creating detailed documentation for his presentation. Professor Veltris had suggested he focus on three key aspects: defensive capabilities, life support systems, and the neural interface. For the defensive demonstration, Dae-hyun used galactic materials to recreate the armor's layered protection. The outer plating was a composite designed to ablate under extreme heat, sacrificing itself to protect the wearer. Beneath that, kinetic barriers that could deflect or slow projectiles. Under that, a flexible aramid weave that provided a last line of defense against penetration. The philosophy is simple, Dae-hyun explained to the gathered observers. Assume you will be hit. Design accordingly. A student asked, "Did it always work?" Dae-hyun touched the scar on the original chest plate. "No, nothing always works, but it worked often enough." During one afternoon session, an accident occurred. Kyung-min was helping move equipment when a heavy fabrication arm malfunctioned, swinging suddenly. The arm caught Kyung-min across the torso, sending them crashing into a workstation. Dae-hyun reacted without thinking. He grabbed the original armor's medical kit, which he kept nearby for reference, and ran to Kyung-min. The student was conscious but struggling to breathe, clearly injured. The armor's emergency medical sensors, still active even in the storage kit, detected the injury. The system activated automatically, extending medical probes and beginning diagnosis. Within seconds, it identified 3 broken ribs and internal bleeding. Dae-hyun followed the system's guidance, applying emergency pressure and administering pain medication from the kit. Other students stood frozen, unsure what to do. Mireille was already calling campus medical services. The armor's display showed vitals, injury assessment, recommended treatment. It walked Dae-hyun through each step, just as it had during combat situations. By the time campus medics arrived, Kyung-min was stabilized. The medics were impressed. "Your intervention likely saved their life," the lead medic told Dae-hyun. "Internal bleeding can become critical very quickly." After Kyung-min was transported to the medical center, Professor Veltris approached Dae-hyun. "That system activated on its own?" "It is programmed to detect injuries within range and respond. We called it the buddy system. If your armor was damaged, nearby armor could assist." This armor was not designed only for killing. No, it was designed for keeping people alive in situations designed to kill them. There is a difference. The incident changed something on campus. Students who had been avoiding Dae-hyun's project began to see it differently. The armor was not just a weapon. It was a survival system, built by a species that had learned the hard way that staying alive required more than just firepower. Jinseo, who had organized the protests, visited Dae-hyun in the lab that evening. The Altarian student looked uncomfortable, but determined. "I wanted to apologize," Jinseo said. "I judged your project without understanding it." "You were not wrong to question it," Dae-hyun replied. "War should be questioned." "But you are not celebrating war. You are honoring survival." "I am trying to." Jinseo looked at the armor laid out on the workstation. "My species has not fought in 10,000 years. We have forgotten what it means to face extinction. Seeing Kyung-min injured, seeing how your armor responded, I realized that we have forgotten because species like yours remembered for us." It was the most understanding Dae-hyun had received from any non-human student. He nodded his thanks. As the replication neared completion, a new visitor arrived. Borum was a human weapons specialist, sent by Earth's government to provide expert testimony to the Galactic Council investigation. She was sharp, professional, and had served in the same conflicts as Dae-hyun, though they had never met during their service. "I have been reviewing your project," Borum said, examining the replica. "This is excellent work." "Thank you." "The Council is concerned that we are hiding military capabilities. I am here to explain that we are not hiding anything. We simply did not think to explain what seemed obvious to us. Which is that we built this equipment because we had to. That every advancement came at the cost of lives lost to inferior equipment. That our technology is not a threat to the galaxy, but a testament to our desperation. Borum pulled up a holographic display showing the evolution of human armor over the past century, from simple Kevlar and ceramic plates to the advanced systems Dae-hyun was replicating, each generation marked by lessons learned in blood. Each improvement came after soldiers died, Borum explained. We did not innovate for the sake of innovation. We innovated because people we knew were dying in preventable ways. She pointed to the neural interface. This system exists because reaction time was the difference between life and death. The medical suite exists because we could not always reach our wounded in time. The power systems exist because we needed to operate in environments that would kill an unprotected human in seconds. Professor Veltris listened intently. You are saying this armor is not a weapon of aggression, but a tool of survival? I am saying it is both and neither. It is what it needed to be. Over the next few days, Borum worked with Dae-hyun to prepare his final presentation. She helped him compile combat footage, medical data, and testimonials from other veterans. The project had grown beyond a simple class assignment into something larger, a comprehensive look at how humanity had adapted to galactic dangers. Mirai helped organize the data, creating holographic displays that would illustrate each point. Kyungmin, recovered from their injuries, insisted on helping despite still being sore. You saved my life with that armor, Kyungmin said. The least I can do is help you present it properly. As the presentation date approached, word spread across the campus and beyond. The auditorium had been booked, not just for the class, but for anyone who wanted to attend. News services requested permission to broadcast. The Galactic Council sent official observers. What had started as a history assignment had become something much larger. Dae-hyun stood in the lab late one night, looking at both versions of his armor. The original, scarred and stained, a record of everything he had survived. The replica, pristine and perfect, showing what the armor was meant to be before reality marked it. Both told the truth. One showed the ideal, the other showed the cost of achieving it. Tomorrow, he would show the galaxy both. The auditorium filled hours before the scheduled presentations. Students from every department arrived early to secure seats. Faculty members gathered in reserved sections. News services set up recording equipment. Galactic Council observers took positions in a special viewing area. What had begun as a simple class assignment had transformed into something unprecedented in the Institute's history. Dae-hyun stood backstage, reviewing his notes one final time. Mirai floated beside him, her energy form pulsing with what he had learned to recognize as nervous excitement. Are you prepared? She asked. As much as I can be. Borum approached, carrying a secure data chip. I just received clearance from Earth Command. They have authorized the release of classified combat footage for your presentation. They believe the galaxy needs to see the full context. Dae-hyun took the chip carefully. What kind of footage? Titan's Ridge, the full battle, your helmet camera and others from your unit. They want people to understand what you survived. The weight of that settled over Dae-hyun. He had lived through Titan's Ridge. He carried the memories every day. But showing those memories to people who had never experienced war, who had lived in peace for thousands of years, would be different. Professor Taeyang appeared, his expression serious. The council observers have requested that you avoid any content that could be considered propaganda or militaristic glorification. I am presenting historical facts, Dae-hyun said. I know. Just be aware that every word will be analyzed. This has become larger than anyone anticipated. The presentations began. Other students went first, displaying their beautiful replicas of ancient armor. Each presentation was well researched and professionally delivered. The audience applauded politely after each one. A Kelmar student presented shell armor that had not been used in actual combat for 6,000 years, explaining its ceremonial significance. An Altarian student showed energy containment suits from her species' early tribal conflicts, 10 millennia past. Each piece was a work of art, a glimpse into ancient history. Then Dae-hyun's name was called. He walked onto the stage, and behind him, 2 platforms rose from below. On one stood the replica armor he had fabricated, pristine and perfect, gleaming under the stage lights. On the other stood the original, scarred and stained, a record of survival. The contrast was immediate and powerful. Dae-hyun began his presentation without preamble. When Professor Veltris assigned us to replicate ancient armor, I faced a challenge that my classmates did not. My species does not have ancient armor in the way you understand the term. What we have is recent armor. Current armor. Armor that was worn by people still living, still carrying the memories of the battles it survived. He gestured to the original. This is Mark's 7th Combat Exosuit, service number 77349. It was issued to me 7 years ago. I wore it in 47 combat engagements across 3 major conflicts and numerous smaller actions. It saved my life more times than I can count. It is now retired, but it is not ancient. The holographic displays activated, showing technical specifications. Dae-hyun walked through each system, explaining the purpose and function. The audience listened in absolute silence. The outer plating is composite ceramic metallic, designed to ablate under plasma fire. This burn mark, he pointed to the scar on the chest plate, is from the Centauri conflict. The plasma penetrated the first 2 layers before the ablative properties stopped it. Internal temperature inside the armor reached dangerous levels, but the environmental systems kept me conscious. He moved to the helmet. This dent is from kinetic impact during the Proxima uprising. A high-velocity round struck at an angle, deflecting rather than penetrating. The impact caused a concussion, but the armor's medical systems administered treatment automatically. More images appeared, showing the armor in action. Not staged photos, but actual combat footage pulled from military archives. The audience saw soldiers moving through hostile terrain, taking fire, responding to threats. The armor was not ceremonial. It was functional, brutal, necessary. The neural interface allows the armor to respond to thought. In combat, you cannot waste time with manual controls. The armor becomes an extension of your body. Dae-hyun paused. But that connection has a cost. When the armor is damaged, you feel it. When squad mates fall, their armor sends distress signals that you cannot ignore. He pulled up medical data. The armor's medical suite includes automated trauma response. During the Battle of Titan's Ridge, my armor detected multiple injuries, 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, severe laceration to the left arm. It sealed the wounds, administered pain suppressors and combat stimulants, and locked my torso to prevent movement that would worsen the injuries. I continued fighting for 3 more hours before evacuation. A student in the audience raised a hand, asking, "Why did you continue fighting if you were so badly injured?" Because stopping meant dying. My squad needed every person who could still pull a trigger. The armor kept me functional when I should have been incapacitated. Dae-hyun activated the footage Borum had provided. What you are about to see is actual combat footage from the Battle of Titan's Ridge. This is from my helmet camera. I want you to understand that this is not ancient history. This happened 5 years ago. Some of the people in this footage are sitting in this auditorium right now. The lights dimmed. The footage began. The galaxy watched as human soldiers fought for survival against overwhelming odds. They saw the chaos, the fear, the desperate coordination. They saw armor taking hits meant for flesh, saw medical systems activating, saw soldiers dragging wounded comrades to safety. They saw Dae-hyun's arm get hit, saw the armor seal the wound, saw him keep fighting. They saw Private Yoonji go down, saw Dae-hyun use his own armor to shield her, saw them both make it to the dropship. They saw 18 hours compressed into 10 minutes of edited footage, and it was more brutal than anything most of them had ever witnessed. When the footage ended, the auditorium was silent. Dae-hyun continued, his voice steady. 40% casualties, but we held. The civilians evacuated. The colony survived. And those of us who made it through carried these scars forward. He gestured to the replica armor. This is what the armor looks like when it is new. Perfect, unmarked, full of potential. This is the ideal we designed toward. Then he gestured to the original. This is what the armor looks like after it has served its purpose. Scarred, damaged, but still functional. This is the reality we live with. Other species in this room have presented armor from thousands of years ago, from times so distant they have become legends. I cannot do that. Humanity's wars are not legends. They are memories. They are trauma we are still processing. They are scars we still carry. A holographic image appeared, showing a memorial on Earth. Thousands of names carved into stone. This is the Titan's Ridge Memorial. Every name here represents someone who wore armor like this and did not come home. Some of their armor was recovered, some was not. But every piece tells a story of someone who stood between danger and the people they were protecting. Dae-hyun paused, letting that sink in. The assignment was to replicate ancient armor. I could not do that honestly. What I can do is show you what necessity creates, what desperation builds, what survival looks like when it is forged in combat. He looked out at the audience, seeing humans who understood, seeing aliens who were beginning to, seeing council observers taking notes. My species joined your galactic community while still bleeding from our wars. We did not have the luxury of centuries to heal before making contact. We came to you as we were, survivors, fighters, builders of desperate solutions to terrible problems. This armor represents all of that. You asked if I wanted it cleaned or blood-stained. The truth is, cleaning it would be a lie. The stains are part of the record. The damage is part of the story. This armor is not ancient, but it is historical. It represents a moment in humanity's timeline when we faced extinction and refused to accept it. A new voice spoke from the audience. It was Hanul, Dae-hyun's former commanding officer, appearing via holographic projection from Earth. Dae-hyun had not known he would be attending. I authorized the release of that footage, Hanul said, because I believe the galaxy needs to understand what Sergeant Lee and soldiers like him endured. That armor kept my people alive when nothing else would. Every innovation in that suit came at the cost of lives lost to inferior equipment. We built it because we had to. Another hologram appeared. Yunji, the soldier Dae-hyun had shielded during the battle. I am alive because of that armor. Not just Sergeant Lee's courage, but because humanity designed equipment that could take punishment meant for flesh and bone. We survived because we built tools that refused to let us die easily. More testimonials followed, from veterans, engineers, medical personnel who had treated armor-saved soldiers, each one adding context, adding weight to what Dae-hyun was presenting. Finally, Minho stood up in the council observer section. He was a high-ranking official, and his presence indicated how seriously the council was taking this presentation. I have been sent to assess whether humanity represents a threat to galactic peace, Minho said. After reviewing this presentation and the associated documentation, my conclusion is clear. Humanity is not a threat. Humanity is a reminder. He addressed the full auditorium. We have lived in peace for so long that we have forgotten what war truly means. We treat it as an academic exercise, a historical curiosity. Humanity has not had that luxury. They remember. They carry the weight of recent survival. This armor should not frighten us. It should humble us. It represents what becomes necessary when peace fails. It is a warning and a testament. Professor Veltris rose to speak. I have taught this course for 20 years. I have seen hundreds of presentations on ancient armor. This is the first time I have truly understood what armor means. Not as decoration, not as ceremony, but as the difference between life and death. She approached the stage, examining both suits of armor. Sergeant Lee, you have earned the highest marks possible, not for technical skill, though yours is excellent, but for honesty, for showing us a truth we needed to see. The auditorium erupted in applause. Some stood immediately. Others followed. Even Jinseo, who had protested the project initially, was standing and clapping. Dae-hyun stood on stage, flanked by two versions of the same armor, and felt the weight of the moment. He had not set out to change minds or challenge the galaxy's perception of humanity. He had simply answered an assignment honestly. But sometimes honesty was revolutionary.